Hey YouTube, what's up? My name's George. Welcome back to my channel. And today for you, like I promised, I have the second movie in the Unbreakable / East Rail 177 series. This one is Split. It's 2016, written, directed, and produced again by M. Night Shyamalan, starring James McAvoy, Anya Taylor-Joy, and Betty Buckley. And it is considered a psychological horror thriller, which I remember when this movie came out and there was some buzz about it at the time, but I heard good things as well as mixed things, so I didn't really know what to make of it. I know I personally wanted to see it in theaters, but I just never got around to it. And then even when it came out at the time, I remember I was just so tired I fell asleep and I didn't really, think anything of the movie at all. But after I've watched it a couple different times and after, seeing Glass, of course, I had a newfound interest in the series, and once, I've seen Split a couple times in the last few weeks, just to kind of refresh my memory and get ready for this review. I'm kind of mad that I never did see it, because I personally love the characters in this movie a lot more than I have in other movies in a really long time that I realized. But anyway, I don't want to take too much time about that. This might be a little bit of a longer review. If you haven't seen my Unbreakable review, check that out first if you haven't seen either of the movies or if you're rewatching the series. So I'm going to get into it. So in the first scene, we're kind of introduced to the Anya Taylor-Joy's character, Casey. It's just kind of a little bit of exposition, not a whole lot, but, you basically sense that, she's kind of a bit of an outcast, and, these girls just kind of invited her to this party so she wasn't left out. Which doesn't bother me. I mean, once we get into the movie more, you realize it's not the best thing to have for an opening character, but you see why it works. But one thing I really appreciate about this movie, considering it's, technically like a horror thriller, 2 minutes into the movie do we get, like the main event happening, and, when these girls are leaving this party together, James McAvoy's character, whose name is Kevin, but I'm going to try to refrain from calling him that as much as I can, he gets in the car instead of the father. You don't know what happened to the father. I'm assuming he's in the trunk. But, and then he knocks him out right away. So 2 minutes into the movie, you get kind of the scenario of what's happening, but you have no idea what else is going on. And that's one thing that I love about this movie. I think is so smart is, like, at no point do you ever really truly feel like you have it figured out, unless you've seen it before, of course. But hopefully a lot of first-time people will watch this movie and they'll understand what I'm talking about. Right after this, we get a little bit of a flashback into Casey. She's hunting with her father and some other guy. It's revealed that it's her uncle. So she's hunting with her dad and his brother, and it's just a quick little flashback that happens a lot during the movie, but I always find that the dad's character is very, really interesting, and I'm not sure if it's the guy who's playing him, but I don't know, there just seems like something more to him that always kind of intrigues me. Unfortunately, we won't really get any explanations for that. Another interesting thing that I found is that James McAvoy's character, he doesn't talk until about 15 minutes into the movie, which I thought was interesting because when you first see him, you get this really, he like tonally he's dark, you tell something's wrong with him. But then the next time we see him, he's going to a therapist appointment and he just has this completely different personality. But that's where we get introduced to Betty Buckley's character. Her name is Dr. Fletcher. And like I said, we realize Kevin has a different demeanor at this point as compared to when we first met him. So that kind of tells you that this movie is not what you think it's going to be at all. And like I said, that's why I think it's so great. And James McAvoy, he does such a good job with like the misdirection in his role. He really does mislead you, and like I was saying in my Unbreakable review, like this is one of those roles I was saying, like with Bruce Willis in Unbreakable and Sixth Sense, where this has got to be, I think this is one of James McAvoy's, if not his best role that he's ever done, range-wise, and I mean, the guy does so many different personalities that you never know who it's going to be, and that is something I don't think we've ever seen in a movie. we basically find out at this little therapy meeting that Kevin is James McAvoy's character. That's who he really is. That's like his actual identity. But we find out that he has multiple other personalities that are living within inside him. So he has 23 other personalities that at any point can just kind of come out and speak and do whatever they want to do for, however long they have their time in the light. In the next scene, there's a conversation between James McAvoy's character and Casey. She's kind of, trying to press him for some information, which she gets, and she comes to the assumption that there must be some way out of here, because this place doesn't necessarily look, looks kind of run down, so there has to be a way out of there. And, pretty quickly into the movie, one of the girls does find an escape route, manages to get out, but then she gets recaptured. And like I said, not to keep praising, but that's another thing I find interesting in this movie is like, because it technically is a horror movie, so the dynamic of it is like, there's things that you would expect in a normal one, but then there's things that are completely like out of left field that you wouldn't expect, and that's what I love about this. But like I said, one of the girls tries to escape, but James McAvoy's character recaptures her. Then we go back to another scene of another therapy session between James McAvoy's character and his therapist, Dr. Fletcher. And she knows that he has all these different personalities, but she can see that something is wrong with him, and that she knows of two particular personalities, Dennis and Patricia, and according to her, they are the most dangerous ones that he has. And you get a nice scene of showing these two actors who are kind of going back and forth trying to not necessarily break character, but in the dialogue they're trying to mess each other up, and neither one of them fall for it, and that's what's so great about the scene. But here's where you get a really good sense of like how good of an actor James McAvoy is, because I really feel like it's at this point of the movie onward is where he like is just relentless with his performance and all of the personalities. Here we get another flashback again of Casey being a little girl. Like I said, these flashbacks are pretty important when you actually piece them together and you put like the story of what happens in her flashback side by side, what's going on with her like in current day. You really do see a lot of similarities, which I really like, because normally in movies flashbacks are a big no-no, but in this one it actually works out for the benefit of the movie. Like, the interesting about her character is that she plays along the most, and these flashbacks make her realize that all the stuff her dad taught her about like hunting and stuff, that she needs to outsmart this guy. And here's where kind of like the tension of the movie is born, where she has to try to outsmart him to escape, but there's not really many resources. Here we go again, another failed attempt by the other girl, and at this point, because of this, he separates all three of the girls for the benefit. I mean, you don't really see the other two girls for a while, so you're not quite sure if they're still alive or not, but of course they are. Which also isn't like a cliche thing to do, because normally in any other movie they'd be dead by now. And here's where James McAvoy's character first references the Beast. It's like this creature that he sees coming, that these girls are sacrificed for, that he's gonna like devour them or something like that. But we don't really get too much about that until a little bit later, because at this point we're about like halfway through the movie, which, like I said, is still kind of unprecedented, but this movie still has you at that point, so you continue to watch and find out what's going to happen. But it's funny because in this scene, afterwards, Casey and James McAvoy's character, they kiss. It's not like sexual or anything like that, but it's just interesting to me because Casey's character, like, you could tell, like, something's off about her, that she has some kind of problem in her past or something like that. But the innocence of James McAvoy's character, like, I don't know, there's just this weird chemistry where you could see, like, not necessarily that, she's, like, starting to like him or anything like that, but, like, a kind of cool what if. We go back to another therapy session, and we find out that Kevin, when he was a boy, was abused as a child by his mother. And, we kind of discovered that, his character kind of made these personalities to protect himself. So that's why they all have different names. because it's not really Kevin, but that's, you know, that's who he actually is. Or I think it's interesting that he would do that, like kind of make all these personalities for himself. I mean, I know he has like a disorder, but that always kind of seemed interesting to me because like they explain that there's like research going on that, you know, that all these people could have different skill sets for different personalities and have it be like possible. It's just, it's really interesting to think about. So you kind of think of their characters more not just as being, you know, like mentally something being wrong with them or whatever. It seems like there's more to that, like more of a kind of supernatural thing to it, which is a nice tone. Here we kind of get a little bit more information that the Beast is the highest form of human evolution, and we're not quite sure what to think of that yet. I think they kind of want you to think about it still until Glass and not make a decision by the end of this movie. You know, at this point in the movie, you've heard it a couple times, and you're still not sure, because this is a psychological movie, if this Beast is real or not. And that's one thing I really like, because it, the whole time, you know, every time I watch it, when I rebuild the suspense, seeing it, every time I watch it, I'm still not quite convinced that the Beast is real, which is something I really liked about this movie. Not a lot of other films ever make you think about stuff like that. And then here we go to another flashback with Casey. She's in the woods with her uncle, and it's just a really odd scene. Like, something seems really weird about it, but, you know, after whatever happens in the woods, Casey as a little girl is holding a shotgun at her uncle and attempts to, well, she doesn't attempt to shoot him, she can't. You know, that just kind of implies more that something happened and something's weird in that relationship. So Dr. Fletcher shows up at James McAvoy's place, which at the time I believe he's Dennis, and she knows that something is going on because one of the other personalities, like in throughout the rest of the movie, has been sending her emails for help, but, you know, one of the other personalities always intervenes and says that, you know, it was just something that happened during the night, I'm fine now, or comes up with some excuse for it. But we really see that Dr. Fletcher is kind of like a mother figure to Kevin, which is really nice, because, you know, we find out that he got abused by his mother, but, you know, he actually has somebody who listens to him and cares for him now, which is just a really nice and different thing to have in this type of movie for once. And we find out that Dennis's personality was created to protect Kevin when he was a kid. So Kevin, like I said earlier, Kevin kind of made these personalities to, in a way, better himself from his rough past, which isn't necessarily an obscene or terrible thing to think of. Next, Dr. Fletcher stumbles onto Kevin holding these girls at his place and tries to tell him, you know, that what he is doing is wrong. She gets knocked out and then kidnapped herself after that. Next scene I really think is interesting because we do see that the Beast finally does exist. After he turns into the Beast, he kills Dr. Fletcher, and now she realizes that, you know, in fact, the Beast is real, and this situation is a lot more worse than she could have realized, is the expression on her face when she dies. In a later scene, Casey escapes, and she goes to rescue the other two girls, but we find out it is too late, which also, like I said before, is another thing that you have people making it this far into the movie, and then to just kind of have them killed, kind of adds to it a little bit more. And that's one thing I really liked about this movie, is they kept the casting very small. It's a very small cast, and not like other horror movies where it's like a girl and her boyfriend, a girl and her boyfriend, a girl and her boyfriend. Like, you have 6 people right there who meet other people. No, this one is very small, so it really works. I mean, the other girls, you know, obviously aren't as important to the story, but they're not terrible in any sense. I mean, they do good with their performances. Casey finds a piece of paper that Dr. Fletcher wrote. She wrote Kevin's name down. Kevin Wendell Crumb. And that's what Kevin's mom would yell at him when she was mad before she would abuse him, is Kevin Wendell Crumb. So by saying that, we find out that it forces Kevin's personality into the light, and, you know, he's actually himself for the first time. And I think he says it's, you know, back in like September was the last thing he remembers. So It might be later in the year, it might be a couple years, or I mean, I forget exactly the date, but just that he hasn't been himself for like that long of a period of time is very eerie and kind of scary, that all these other personalities just took over his body like that. Kevin tells Casey that he has a shotgun and he wants her to kill him, which is, you know, kind of sad if you think about it. But like I said, that's just one of the reasons why I think this character is so much more better written than people give it credit for. But after that, he kind of struggles, and we see him go through all of his personalities, or most of them, and then back to the beast. So then he starts hunting Casey again, and then we get another flashback that Casey's father died, and she had to live with her uncle, and there's more implication that the relationship, there's something wrong about it. But anyway, that's something we actually found out about Glass. I mean, like I said, you can kind of imply, but you actually get like spoken word about it in Glass. And after she shoots the beast a couple times and doesn't die, he realizes that Casey has self-inflicted, cut wounds on herself, and he realizes that she is pure, but she's not necessarily innocent, because the stuff that is implied that happened with her uncle, and she clearly has some other kind of struggle going on. And it's interesting because James McAvoy, he has so many good lines in this movie, but he says, the broken are the evolved, which, kind of more in a sense saying that broken people are more evolved than people who aren't, which is also like, another one of the underlying themes in this movie. But after that, the Beast and Casey escape. We're not sure what happens to, Kevin. And, you get this sense that Casey really appreciates her life now and, like, kind of sees things for what they are and what she should and shouldn't have done. And the cops tell her, your uncle's here to pick you up, and she doesn't want to go. So that's kind of where we're left with Casey. We do find out what happens in Glass. Like I said, stay tuned for that if you want to know. And then we see that Kevin almost survives unscathed, too, and all the personalities kind of embrace this beast now, because they were kind of fighting him during the movie, and that's where we're left off with his character. The biggest twist is at the very end, where we see Bruce Willis. Of course, his name tag says Dunn on it, so he is David Dunn from Unbreakable. It sets up for Glass. It kind of deems James McAvoy's character the Horde now. I remember when this movie came out, everybody thought it was great because it was psychological, and then, of course, nobody saw the twist coming at the end that, this was, in fact, a sequel to Unbreakable, and I remember even after I heard that, it made me want to see the movie more, which, like I said, I did go back and rewatch the whole series, and I'm obsessed with it right now because that's how great I think it is and how overlooked it is at the moment. This movie just is so different than other horror movies, and that's why I like to treat it by itself, because even though it is a part of this like expanded universe, dissecting these movies just as their own standalones, this movie just works on so many levels, and I don't know how, like, James McAvoy, if he didn't get any Oscars or anything for this, because like I said, he just does such a great job. I mean, he's playing 23 different people, and he's killing all of his performances. But that's also another point, reminds me of a point I want to bring up, that, after watching this movie a couple times, I always thought James McAvoy is the main character. And at this point, I kind of feel like, Anya Taylor-Joy's character, they're both the main characters. Like, nobody's necessarily a bad guy in this movie. And just as much for James McAvoy, I don't know how either one of those two didn't win any, like, big awards if they didn't, because I'm not going to say I was huge fans of them before. I was pretty big fans, but after this movie, I just think they're just next level actors. But anyway, before I ramble on too long, that's my review for Split. Make sure you come back next week, where I will be doing a review for Glass, for the last and final movie in this series. And then after that, I'll be doing a box opening, hopefully, if I get it by then, and then more reviews. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. I look forward to hearing from you guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.